Time to list my bottom 10 She-Ra episodes. Making this list was honestly way more difficult than either of the times I listed my bottom 10 He-Man episodes, since She-Ra just doesn't have that many awful episodes. Most of the time, if a She-Ra episode isn't to my liking, it's more because I don't find the story particularly interesting, and not because I think the episode is necessarily badly directed or animated. However, after thinking about it hard enough, I was able to come up with a list of 10 episodes which aren't just disappointing, but which genuinely irritated me so much that I make a point not to watch them. A couple of dishonorable mentions include Enemy with My Face, which has Hordak make a double of She-Ra, who looks absolutely nothing like her, and Lesson in Love, aka Flutterina is a Cradle Robber, the episode. And let's get on with it. At number 10, My Friend, My Enemy. So, in this episode, Skeletor and Catra trick Hordak into eating a Doomberry pie. Doomberries make a person who consumes them vanish from existence, and so She-Ra goes on a quest to find Hordak's old master to shed tears for Hordak, as that is the only cure. But of course, She-Ra is the only one who feels sorry enough for Hordak to save him. Now, the premise of the episode about She-Ra saving Hordak's life is honestly intriguing in and of itself, but unfortunately I feel this episode completely fails to imbue the story with any weight, and as such, it becomes kinda cringy. Also, Catra pretty much plotted to straight up murder Hordak, and we never refer to this again? Number 9, Assault on the Hive. This is the return episode of Sweet Bee, where Skeletor, Beastman, and Trapjaw, well, assault the Hive, with the intention of enslaving the bee people. Considering this is the sequel to my favorite She-Ra episode, Sweet Bee's Home, you'd probably assume I'd like it. However, this is easily one of the dumbest She-Ra episodes. Not dumb as in silly or funny, but dumb as in completely nonsensical. Some of the weird things that happen include Adam fishing in the pit of Grayskull, weird toy characters being introduced out of the blue, and Skeletor fist-pumping the air constantly. On top of that, the dialogue is just awful, and the ending completely contradicts the previous episode when the bee people decide to settle on Etheria after all. However, this episode is also pretty entertaining despite being a disappointing follow-up episode, so I decided it didn't deserve to go any higher. Number 8, Magic Cats. She-Ra and Catra end up discovering a race of cat people living underground who mistake Catra's cat form as their lost queen and turn on She-Ra. This episode represents an unfortunate trend with She-Ra, which was tossing her into a completely different setting with characters who would never return in another episode. Literally, the only saving grace for this episode, in my view, is that the Magic Cats mistaking Catra as their queen makes at least some sense, because this episode is also the origin story of her mask, which belonged to their queen. And this is also perhaps the only episode where Catra's transformation is at all helpful. Number 7, Book Burning. The Horde are, well, burning books, and they imprison a local school teacher and manage to sucker the local rebel-hating little boy to work as a spy for them, until he realizes the Horde are jerks who want to destroy his village, and turns on them. Book burning feels like a real slap in the face. It's obviously trying to invoke some World War II imagery in an effort of seeming big and important, but it really is just another episode about an SCC, or stupid child character. Again, this episode is more disappointing than flat out bad, mainly because it doesn't really do anything interesting with its setup. Number 6, The Wild Child. Some villagers think that a pack of wolves are ruining their crops, and it turns out they're protecting a little girl who is the lost princess of a distant country. Not only does the girl have trouble fitting in with the other kids, she's also having to fend off the dumb villagers until they all realize the plants are dying because a volcano is becoming active. This episode kinda has a little too much going on in it. The idea of the villagers blaming the wolves for their crops dying is okay, if a little dumb, but shoehorning the lost princess bit into it was a little too much for me. And I also think the finale is super disappointing, with the Wild Child abandoning her wolf family. Now, the main reason I think this episode is stupid is because the girl speaks some weird language to the wolves.
Ala will stay here, but only for a while.
Why? Why are you doing it? Why? It makes absolutely no sense. Why isn't she, like, howling or something?
Must say goodbye to dear animal sister. Gunda Ala,
So, kind of an unfocused mess of an episode, but still not awful, which is why it barely missed the bottom 5. Number 5, Birds of a Feather. Okay, get your popcorn ready, because I'm about to introduce you to the single dumbest She-Ra one-off character. Are you ready? Here we go. This is Red-Eye, Cowl's evil cousin. Cowl, the most useless rebel member, has an evil cousin, and he's called Red-Eye because he has red eyes. The Horde decides to hire him because Shadow Weaver uses him to form a psychic link with Cowl to spy on the rebels. This is already a pretty bad start to the episode, which tries to make us care about Cowl. And look, I don't think Cowl is inherently unlikable, but he's kind of a discount Orko, but not nearly as useful. The episode is mainly hampered by its utterly stupid direction. The dialogue has this erratic and weird punctuation.
Swifty, what is it?
They hit my wing. It's frozen.
Oh no.
But it's also actually kinda hilarious, and there are actually a few decent scenes in it, like when the heroes are stuck in the volcano, which is why I can't have it higher, but it still is a really dumb episode. Number 4, Dark Smoke and Fire. This is the one and only episode appearance of Granomir on She-Ra, and unfortunately they managed to completely fuck it up. How? Well, in this episode, She-Ra is sent to Eternia of the past by Modulok, and has to undo the evil machinations of characters recycled from her twin brother's show. Seriously, this episode pisses me off. Not only did they soil Granomir's one appearance on She-Ra by making it about her being stuck in the past of all places, the episode shows Granomir actually being nice to humans, which is completely at odds with his character development. And yes, recycling Tauron and Locust without editing their character models is just the icing on the shit cake. There really was no reason to set this one as a time travel episode, which makes it all the more baffling. They couldn't just have She-Ra go to Eternia to meet Granomir normally? How dumb is that? The worst Granomir episode and the worst time travel episode from She-Ra in one fell swoop. Still not Modulok's worst appearance, which doesn't surprise me. Number 3, Friends Are Where You Find Them. An alien prince, Joel, lands on Etheria, and the Horde tries to capture his robo-friend. It's another SEC episode, and Joel is easily one of the most annoying child characters from any She-Ra episode. Nearly on par with Jeremy from He-Man's The Royal Cousin. Namely because he keeps repeating the words robo-friend through the whole episode.
My robo-friend's guidance system was damaged. Oh, robo-friend! I don't usually do that. My robo-friend does it for me. Robo-friends only work for their owners. My robo-friend!
Jesus! Look, Joel, I don't know what you do with your quote-unquote robo-friend, but something tells me you'd better keep it to yourself, buddy.
Friends don't ask to use your robo-friend. Excuse me, I forgot something in my room.
Number 2, Jungle Fever. She-Ra gets amnesia after escaping a Horde prison, meets a primitive tribe, first angers, and then ends up saving all of them. If this all sounds familiar, then yes, this episode is literally just the She-Ra version of A Tale of Two Cities. In other words, it feels like an episode of a completely different cartoon which just has She-Ra shoved into it, and having her conveniently lose her memories so that she doesn't just try to bolt from the setting. Now, I'd want to say this episode isn't as bad as A Tale of Two Cities, since unlike that episode, they at least feature a few more series original characters, but it just feels so jarringly out of place. It really just isn't a fulfilling or enjoyable episode at all. And number 1, When the Whispering Woods Last Bloomed. This is the origin episode of Natasha and Spinnerella, where Spinnerella is tricked by the Horde to attack She-Ra when they capture Natasha. Now, apart from the fact that these two are about the least consequential rebel characters with barely 3 episode appearances between them, what baffles me about this episode is that it's actually told as a flashback, with Natasha and Spinnerella relaying the full story to the rebels who were present at the event. I seriously don't understand why this framing of the episode as a story was necessary. It literally feels like they did this to pad out the script. And speaking of which, the dialogue in this episode is just ungodly. I was originally only going to have this as the 4th or 5th episode on the list, but when I sat down to record the footage, I was just dumbstruck by how utterly awful this episode's direction and writing is. Even Spinnerella's hilarious power isn't enough to salvage it. Easily the most ineptly put together She-Ra episode, and thus deservedly number 1. And that's all from me for now. Until next time, I have the power, so can you.
We have the power.